Well, on behalf of District 55, I'm Bart Loeser, and I do welcome you guys here to one of our continuing education classes. This particular class will be all about mentoring, everything you want to know about working with mentors and mentees in your club. And we have two particular people that will be on our panel who are experts at this. And so one of our first experts is our Jean, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? I guess you'll introduce yourself and what brought you here and what interests you about mentoring. And then we'll have Rick Collins on here to introduce himself, and they will be our panelists. So Jean, take it away.
Thanks, Bart. So I am Jean Ramsey. I've been in Toastmasters since 2008. So if you do the math, that's 12 years, 12 amazing years. I joined Toastmasters to become a better speaker. I was physically anxious about public speaking, and what's kept me in for this long are the leadership opportunities. That's what surprised me the most. I was a charter member of my club when I started, and we didn't have a mentorship program at the beginning. So we had to kind of figure it out. And through a lot of trial and error, lots of errors, lots more trials, we've got a fairly established program in my club, in my home club. And we do pretty good. You know, every once in a while we miss. So I'm kind of more the expert on what might not work. Yeah, like I said, trial and error, we've been through a lot. And I'm currently serving as the program quality director this year for District 55.
Wonderful, thank you for that. And now Rick Collins, will you tell us a little bit about you and what you're doing with the district and what brings you on the call and our panel?
Okay, certainly. My name is Rick Collins. I'm currently serving as the District 55 mentoring chair. I've served in various district capacities in the past, area director, division director. I've been a Toastmaster off and on for, gosh, it's probably 15 years now. And some of those were, you know, like 2 years off type deal. But, and the reason I'm here is because of my role in mentoring, and plus I'm just very interested in the whole mentoring concept. So that's why I'm here, to hopefully answer questions. And if some of you aren't familiar with what we're doing, I can certainly give a little background to kick us off. I deliberately didn't bring a PowerPoint. I'm not a big fan of PowerPoint for these kinds of meetings. Personally, I'm interested in what you are interested in and what your questions are.
Right. Well, thank you, Rick. Well, and what I thought I'd do is start it off with talking about what areas we're going to cover. And I looked at some of the questions that have been presented in the past, and there's 3 areas that I sort of broke it down to. One is just talking about basic club issues and their approaches to a mentorship program. Then generally the district's approach to qualifications for a mentor. And then basically the logistics that we encounter in that program itself. So where I thought I'd do is just ask both Rick and Jean a little bit about club issues, such as how does my club even get started building a mentorship program? Like, what can we do? Where can we find the resources? And what does it look like? So,
okay, Jean, go ahead. And also Kathy Moore will probably have some additional information as well. So Jean, if you want to take that one first, or.
Absolutely. So I would, you know, my philosophy on all of this is to, if you don't have a mentoring program in your club at all, start small. Start with baby steps. You may want to think about where you want to go and kind of build a strategy, sort of a long-term vision, that when new members join your club, they get oriented right away. They get introduced to pathways, that they get matched with somebody that's totally compatible, and that your existing members get matched with mentors who are strong in the skill sets that those more tenured folks are trying to develop. So, you know, that could be a great long-term plan, but to get started, I think you may want to ensure that as new members are joining your club, that they get oriented to the club culture quickly, and signed into Pathways right away. That's sort of first steps as far as that goes. And then once you get to a point where your new member orientation and mentorship is working, is when you can start to extend that out to some of your more tenured folks as well.
Great.
And,
thank you, Gene. Rick, could you
and,
tell us
and I might
about
just
your program?
just add to that, the club that I belong to, Tejas, believe it or not, is with me as the District 55 mentoring chair. We are just formalizing our mentoring program. And as Gene indicated, we're going to deliberately keep it simple to start. And one of the first things I'm looking for, or we're looking for as a club, I've got 4 people in the club that are going to help me flesh this out, and then we'll bounce it around with the whole club and get it settled probably within the month or so. And it's going to be a very simple structure at first, but I think the most important thing is that we have a list of all our club members, and there is a mentor's name next to it. I've heard, a lot of people say, well, we've got a mentoring program. Well, they really don't if they can't tell you who's mentoring who. And we're going to have some basic guidelines on what mentors do and what the mentee will bring to the table as well. And this is just my personal opinion, but it's my overall philosophy is it's up to the mentee to set their goals, and the mentor guides them through that. But with new members, they don't know what they don't know yet. So, with the new member, the mentor will have to step them through the club, the roles, the culture of the club, and then start building on to and get them started with speaking and pathways, and then get them oriented to the overall district and TI program. So that's all I want to add at this point. And we've got Calvin joined us as well, and I know he's very experienced with this. So at some point, I'm sure he'll want to chime in.
So what I'd like to do is we'll just address specific issues of mentoring, and then have either Gene, Rick, Calvin, even Kathy, anyone who wants to join in with a comment, who wants to add to the program, feel free just to signal me or something, and then you can speak next. So the next question, rather than just a club building a mentorship program, is, well, what if we don't have enough potential mentors in our club? Some clubs don't have enough experienced people who we think could help them as mentors. So what do we do if we don't have enough mentors available for the new people joining our clubs? Who would like to take that? Gene.
He's ready.
So going back to mentoring new members, I think my theory is if you orient people pretty quickly when they first join the program, and you explain to them, not just how to get started, but like the whole possibility of the education program, you're really doing them a great service, kind of getting them on the road. And if you're in a club that doesn't have a lot of tenured folks that are, or folks that are available to step up, one thing to think about is kind of like a pipeline mentorship program, in that who better to mentor the new folks coming in than somebody who may have just completed a level 1 in Pathways. Those folks are very familiar with how it felt kind of coming in, how it was getting oriented, the terror of the first time getting up for table topics, how do you get through your first icebreakers. So if you don't have tenured folks, think about taking someone that just completed level 1 and matching them with a brand new member, because they've just recently been through that whole process.
I love that idea, Gene, especially since level 2 really focuses on mentoring. So once you finish level 1, you're going to be working on mentoring, and why not take on a mentor and get that experience? So I think that's great, especially since they're fresh off of all the experiences that they would need to share with someone who's just beginning.
Yeah, and they can be super empathetic because they just kind of powered through a lot of that themselves. And as you mentioned, it's a nice segue into the mentorship module in Pathways.
Yeah, and you don't have to be.
Are there any other?
You don't have to be a 10-year veteran to be a mentor. You need some experience, and I think that is a great idea, Gene, as they just finished it. You got to be careful about the blind leading the blind. I've told folks too that it's ideal, I think, if the mentors are all in the same club, but there may be mentors from a neighboring club that could help your club out as well. And as I've done several presentations on this, I've told people, check with your area director to see if they can maybe guide you towards, and we're working on having a list available on the District 55 website about who might be available mentors. We collected a list of folks at the last TLI, and I guess we're working that through the process.
Oh, so Rick, is it possible then to be from another club and be asked to mentor somebody in a different club?
I'm okay with that, but you're talking to somebody who doesn't want to put a whole bunch of rules on this. I mean, I think the idea is somebody that has, there's somebody that they can go to that can help them with whatever issues they've got. I think ideally they'd be in their club, because then they get to know them, they can help them on a regular basis. But that's my take. But Calvin, Kathy?
I was going to say, there's no rules. There's no rules, Rick. If you're out and you're networking, you see somebody, say, at a speech contest who's just hilarious, and you're trying to incorporate some humor into your speech, I'm sure they'd be honored if you were to go up and ask them for some pointers and maybe, a coffee date.
Yeah, my opinion on this is taken in current circumstances where you're not going to network and you're not going to be in a club setting face to face. I think the idea of e-mentoring, essentially in mentoring through Zoom or even through a phone call, is probably going to be more prevalent for current times. And I really like the idea that Rick has initiated, which is collecting a list of people that are highly enthusiastic and may or may not be experienced, but more importantly, they have the caring heart to want to mentor someone. Create that global list and create like a team very similar to our pathway team that we currently have in existence, where people just connect with a team of folks. And perhaps within that team experience, they can identify one or two of the teammates, and they can say, hey, can we get in more of a one-on-one type of mentoring relationship? And then you build that from that point on. I think, especially at this point in time, especially with the concern that some clubs are small, they lack experience, or maybe it's even a birth of a new club where there's just a lot of people there with a lot of energy and momentum, but they got nowhere to go for guidance to the next level. I think having someone like Rick says, like a list of people that's available to just hop on at any time on a remote access through Zoom or through phone number to lead them through those next few steps is highly important. And also consistent with what Gene was saying is that when people join a club or just join Toastmasters in general, there is a number of times or dates or days, you can count it down to weeks, where a person, if they don't get significant help, they're just going to lose interest. Either they're not going to renew or they're going to leave completely. And if you think about how this relates to current business models, Toastmaster is like an asset service, right? Like a SaaS service or anything as a service. And those people who sell subscription-based service, as what Toastmaster is subscription-based, they really focus on onboarding and building relations with their clients so that when it comes to renewal time, they know what the value proposition is. So given I said that, the mentoring program is very important, not only equipping new members, but it's also important for retention of membership as they go through transitions to renewal cycles.
Thank you, Calvin. And I believe Kathy Moore, our club growth director, also has something to add here. So Kathy?
Yes, thanks, Bart. We have a very unique situation in the corporate club that I'm a member of, because we have usually 30 or 35 new members every renewal period, because we're set up as a leadership development program. And it is totally doable to have people initially mentored by people within the club, because what we do is we have a checklist, a very simple checklist. Introduce yourself to your mentee, show them how to get on the website and what they're for, show them how to log in and choose a path and help them with their first speech, their icebreaker. So when we have new members, we take the people that are our long-term members, which in some cases they've only been with the club a year, and they have sometimes 4 or 5 mentees each. And then as soon as that person gets comfortable, we give them somebody to mentor. So it's a big deal at Medtronic, and everybody looks forward to being asked to mentor someone. And then once they get their feet wet and they are more experienced, if they're interested in leadership outside the club and we really push that, then we also help find them mentors outside the club that can help them with leadership so they get a different perspective. So we have a fairly organized mentoring program, but it's still pretty simple.
Well, thanks, Kathy. And I was asked by somebody on here, I see, who said, can you share that checklist with us? We'd be very interested in seeing that. Right. And I realize that sometimes our signals are not as strong as we would like them to be, so we might miss something in the message. So if anyone misses something vital, feel free to ask someone to repeat. That's perfectly fine. So I do have another question. So let's say your club has a lot of experienced potential mentors, but they say, I don't have time to mentor. What might you be able to do to try to persuade them to make some time? Does anybody have any ideas?
Well, you know, I think, and a while back when I was visiting with the my club about mentoring, I asked the club 2 questions. I said, do you think mentoring would help the club? And all hands went up. Do you think you could use a mentor? All hands went up. So basically everybody agrees mentoring is a good thing. And I guess, yeah, well, a couple things. One, I don't think we can force fit this. You know, if somebody said, I don't have time, I'm not going to do it, you know, unfortunately, they may not be in that position. I would try to encourage them and say, you know, it may not take as much time as you may be thinking it does. And I'd let that individual know, depending on the individual, that, you know, you are a valuable person here. You have so much to offer. This person, it seems, really interested in you being their mentor, and you know, hopefully we could sway them. But
Okay.
I'm open to suggestions on that.
Sure. Well, let's hear from Jean. Jean, what would you suggest?
If somebody's kind of busy and yeah, doesn't feel that they can make the time, then you might have to sell what's in it for them, right? Where are the benefits of what are the benefits of being a mentor? And you know, for me, it's that, you know, there's a tremendous joy in helping people achieve their goals, and as you're working through that, sometimes you learn something. You might learn something new from your mentee, or you might, you know, learn something new about yourself as you're working through. But there's a lot of joy, and then there's more benefits. And you know what, so funny, Bart, you were saying you didn't want to use PowerPoints, but I'm going back to our training from the TLIs, and I'm like, what are the benefits of being a mentor? You are kind of locked into being engaged in the club's success, and maybe that necessarily isn't a benefit to yourself, but it is to your club. You know, and you're kind of like working towards the sustainability of your club.
Now that's a really good point, Jean. I think that's probably something that could, for many of us who are been with clubs for a while, we want to see them be successful, and what makes them most successful is turning our new members into members who will stay. Because we do know there's a minimum of about a 40% rate of loss of our members over a year. And one thing that might keep them on board is an additional sense that they're really learning and getting support from the club. And I think mentorship could be that type of support that would encourage people to stay on. What I would recommend, and you guys might comment on this is you can always let someone know that with tools like this, you don't have to go meet someone somewhere where it's going to take an hour and a half, 2 hours to mentor somebody. You could say, I've got 20 minutes. Why don't you join me on Zoom or Skype or anything else, and let's go over what your issues are this week. And I'd give somebody 20 minutes a week. You know, I don't know if I can give someone an hour and a half or 2 hours, but I can certainly give them 20 minutes. And most people are pretty receptive to that idea that I talked to. Kathy, were you going to say something?
Oh, yeah, the leadership mentoring that I have gotten or received in the formal pathways program, it's all been by telephone. I mean, that's just the easiest thing to do.
Okay, well, great. Well, let's go back not to the individual, but sometimes some clubs themselves are not enthusiastic about stressing out their club by trying to encourage people to be mentors. So how could we encourage a club to get more enthusiastic about developing this mentoring program for those who don't have one?
You know, I think, you know, what Gene mentioned earlier about the benefits to the club, the benefits to the mentor and the mentee, and keeping the club strong. And, you know, if we've actually got a little bit deeper issue, I guess, if people just aren't interested in the club, and mentorship, if we want to keep a strong club, mentorship, I believe, is a key to that, and maybe appeal to their higher values or something. And also, you know, I think and I really think it's going to take a while for this to be perhaps a culture shift within Toastmasters, and it becomes a very common thing, at least here in District 55. And I think as it becomes more and more a part of it, it becomes more part of each club's culture, and it's just what we do, and it's going to grow. And we will have those growing pains for maybe a couple of years. I don't even know what I just said, but I tried.
Bart, can I share something too from being a member in the past of business and professional Toastmasters? I think most people know they've been around for about 65 years. And when I was a member, immediately from the time I joined the club, people started mentoring me. And they do really what I would call team mentorship. There's constantly somebody teaching you something, showing you something, asking you to do something. And to me, mentoring is the secret of longevity. And in the clubs we have that have been around a long time, I think they all have good mentoring programs, whether it's formalized or not.
Well, Kathy, you make a great point there, because not only do they feel more supported, but there's a greater sense of obligation to the club. When someone has been mentored in their club, these are people who are more likely to give back as well. Because there are a lot of people who join Toastmasters who never think to give back to their clubs, and yet that's a very important part of what we do. So if they've been mentored, they also would be more open to turning into mentors themselves.
Another club that's really good about that is Betty's Club, Gavel Masters. Everybody in Gavel Masters is involved outside of their own club, helping other people.
Great.
And what I like to do, can I talk?
Yes.
What I like to do is help or mentor them through their first contest or their first TLI and their first everything. And then anything else they need, but that's one thing I enjoy doing. Through those.
Excellent. Well, that kind of leads me to something that I was wondering too. What about the formality of the program? Do we need to develop a very formal structure to the program? Like how do we assign, or like sometimes we ask the new person who's in the club, who would you like to mentor you? And they usually respond, well, I don't really know many people, or they may only know one person really well. Should they be assigned by a mentor that they may not necessarily know at all? So how do we best formalize this program and the relationship initially?
So I'll say it doesn't have to be formal. And a lot of it is Rick's going for no rules. But no, I mean, it has to work in your club. It has to work in
Yeah.
your club's culture, right? So you have to really think about that. It's not like a you know, one recipe is gonna work the same for every club, but and you know, some clubs have existing mentorship programs that may or may not be working. They may need to flex, and some clubs don't have a mentorship program at all, and it's hard to just to kind of like throw a whole template or a very formal outline, you know, and just kind of kick it off and expect that to work. It has to be, I think it has to be more organic. It has to be what works within that culture. It has to be what's right for the individual members, right? So that's a tough one. It's really tough because what you have to do is do the hard work. Find out from the newbies how that experience is, figure out where they might need some guidance and some help, and then with your more tenured members, figure out who's interested in gaining more skills, and then match them with, I mean, just match them with people who have those skills inside or outside the club, right? So I will say there's no formal process, but I do have 3 PowerPoint slides, which are examples of kind of how to get started, if we want to share that.
Sure. Did you want to go ahead and put them up right now?
Yeah. I just was kind of thinking about that.
While she's doing that, just real quick, I just wanted to add, I mean, you know, I'm not suggesting it just be completely willy-nilly. I mean, we do need some frameworks, but it needs to work within each club, and then no member is left behind.
Mm-hmm. Now, a good point. You want to make sure no one is, and Jean brought up something I thought was really important too, is I've been in some clubs before where they want to wait until the mentee asks for the mentor. And I'm sort of the perspective, if someone comes into the club and they don't have any experience with Toastmasters, they should be assigned a mentor. They shouldn't even be given a choice unless they absolutely say, I don't want to work with somebody. But if you leave it up to them to decide, there are a lot of people who will just say, I just want to check things out for a while, and then if I need someone, I'll ask.
Yeah.
And then it never seems to happen for them.
Right.
So I wouldn't recommend that approach.
What we try to do in my club is when somebody expresses interest in joining, and kind of through that process of them joining, the VP of membership tries to kind of drill down into, you know, how'd you hear about us? What are you looking to get out of this? How much time do you want to put into this? What are your kind of specific goals? Where are you with your career? Where you want to be? And then we try to, you know, as best we can, take all that information and match it with somebody who might best, you know, get along with them, right? Mm-hmm. Like a really good fit, maybe somebody who possesses some of those skills that they're looking to develop, etc. So we try to be a little bit more, we try to drill down a little bit more at the beginning to see if we can do a good match, right? Because that's really killer, is making a good match at the very beginning, I think.
Okay. And is there any formal way, like, do we have any forms for Toastmasters to review with people what their interests are?
Oh my goodness, Bart. Funny that you would ask. so there's a couple forms that you can use. First is the new member survey. Like, what are you hoping to accomplish? Oh, you know, and maybe even over time. And then for your existing members, we have a member interest survey, which is, you know, where you at, how are you feeling about what you're doing, and what else do you want to achieve? You know, do you want to do more with leadership? Do you want to do more with marketing or membership building, et cetera, right? So that you kind of can really specifically survey your members and find out what their next steps might be, and then match them with somebody who can help them achieve that.
Oh, great. Well, with your slideshow, you say there are 3 slides you want to point out?
Yeah. So it's not formal. It's not formal, but it's a great example of how you might kind of approach mentoring. And somebody was asking, like, in the chat, who was it here? Like some specific stuff. I thought I saw something here. Like formal, simple, format, like kind of like a somewhat of a template, but you have to be flexible with it. But, you know, just a few examples here of like what your first meeting between a mentor and mentee would be is talk about the club customs and procedures. How do you sign up to be timer? How do you sign up to be, to present your icebreaker? And then, you know, figure out how you want to work together to get them ready for that 4 to 6 minutes of jumping into the ice. A second meeting might be, you know, to delve a little further into resources, to provide positive feedback after that icebreaker's been delivered. Ideally, you'll have somebody else evaluate them, and then you provide them a second bit of feedback. But what's great as a mentor is you really are should be drilled down into like what they're working on as an individual. So you could really focus on that. Explain sort of the Toastmaster responsibilities and kind of keep things moving along. And then here's the big one, right? You kind of get into a few meetings and you get them oriented, you get some momentum going. But for me, this is what made a difference for me at the beginning, was that somebody said to me, hey, I've been in Toastmasters for a while, and here's what it did for me as far as career development, and how it really made me, you know, they say it's a bit of a cliche, but a better version of myself, or helped me find my voice, right? It helped me speak more confidently in the nonprofit organization that that I'm volunteering in. And then getting outside of the club. Again, that was something that somebody really encouraged me to do, or a few people. A few of my mentors early on encouraged me to get outside of my club, and that's one of the reasons I will say that I've been in for 12 years.
Becky said she wasn't experienced.
And then, you know, you start to explain.
To add to that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, if you explain full potential, then people kind of know about that early and see the full possibilities.
Great. Well,
You know, I think part of it is just keeping folks interested in it and not letting it die. And I think that last slide Jean showed is really kind of the fruit of the labor, so to speak, that they really kind of done some things they didn't expect to do. But keeping this alive over time in your club is going to take some leadership within the club.
It does indeed. And everybody looks at like VP of education as the responsible party, right, for setting up and managing a mentorship program. But your poor VP of ed is already like trying to keep all your roles filled at every meeting that's coming up, and tracking everybody's progress, making sure everybody gets the opportunities to speak and to accomplish their goals. So what we did early on in my club was we made a VP of mentorship, and they partnered with the VP of education. And they were kind of, you know, like the matchmaker, right? They were the ones that were figuring out from the VP of membership, hey, what's this new person interested in? And they knew, you know, made sure that they knew what interests were for the more tenured members, and they were the ones that were making the match. So again, that's recruiting an 8th person to be on your executive committee, right? And sometimes that's not an easy task, but if there's somebody that you think might be good at that, they might be your next VP of ed or VP of membership after they take on that matchmaking mentorship position.
Well, Jean, you make a great point that I've done with several of clubs I work with, where the VP of ed always tends to feel overwhelmed anyways in their club. And when you suggest, well, you should set up a mentoring program, they get very stressed out. And it's like, I'm doing the best I can with everything I need to do. And I always try to teach officers that your job is not to do these things. Your job is to make sure they get done. If you can get others to do this, and this is what I would suggest, having a committee, like a VPE committee, where one person on that committee would be in charge of the mentoring program, who would report to the VP of E, but the VP Ed does not necessarily have to do the mentoring program and set it all up. Any comments on that?
I like that concept. In fact, that's what we're doing in our club. We're going to have the mentoring kind of a separate deal because I think it deserves that level of importance for the club.
Great. Any other comments? All right. Well, I have another question that someone has asked me before, which was, tell me more about the Pathways Mentor Learning module. Who would like to speak to the new Pathways Mentor Learning module?
I'm not going to be the one to speak to that. Somebody that's actually gone through there. I'm still.
Wafae, I was going to nominate you. I'm so glad you turned your video on.
Okay, great. I am working on that right now with my mentee, so I'll be happy to share my experience. You have to complete level 2 in order to have access to, this is an elective program and it's a 6-month project. It's very comprehensive. There are weekly logs on the communication that you exchange between your protege, and there are evaluations on both parts. The mentee evaluated me, I evaluated him. And at the end, you have to submit the information and you get a certificate, and then you're officially a certified mentor. So it is a great program. It has standards to follow and steps. You don't have to come up with your own program or checklist, if you will, but it really guides you step by step on what to do. It just is a longer term with Pathways than with the traditional program.
Great. Thank you, Wafae. And Ray, I believe you had a comment as well.
Here we go. Actually, I am a certified mentor. I finished the certification program about a year ago, and I currently have 6 protege and work with them on a fairly regular basis. But what I will tell you is, beginning, what I try to do is catch somebody coming into the clubs, and I'm a member of 3 right now. Last year I was a member of 5. But if you can catch them coming in and sit down with them as soon as they pay their money and they sign up, put them in front of a computer and say, this is what you can do without a login, even before you get to be a Toastmaster. You can go to Toastmasters International. You can go through the entire Pathways program through your icebreaker, just like you were logged in and had your own system set up. And you can start that right now. And the last time I did that was 2 weeks ago. We went to the virtual meetings last week, and that person, that gal, gave her first speech the second meeting she was at. Now she's fired up about doing this because I got started. I'm good. And so you keep that momentum flowing. And the second part I would say is, as you take on a protege, a new protege, through the program, which we just talked about in the certification program, you guarantee them 2 hours a month. And the first month, maybe in the second month, they'll want it. The third month, not so much. 4, 5, 6, they got a hang of it. They know what's going on. They call you when they need some help or when they need something. Help me out with this because I don't understand what I need to do in this part of it. So yeah, in the beginning of it, in that particular program, and there's some paperwork. I mean, they have to fill out, what their objectives are for the next 5 years.
Well, Ray, you brought up a good point I have a question about, and either you or others might answer. What about someone who already has a DTM, let's say? They've got lots of experience. Would they need a mentor?
Absolutely.
So
everybody,
if you're a DTM.
I am a DTM. I have 2.
Ah, excellent.
One in Pathways and one in the legacy system. And I still have a mentor. Because no matter where you're at in life, there's always somebody above you. Oh, and if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Good point. And we as Toastmasters are always learning no matter what level we're at.
Absolutely. Oh. And I will tell you, you want to know what you get from being a mentor? You get a whole lot of satisfaction. as you watch those people grow in the Toastmasters program, you see them do their icebreaker and work through level 1 and move on up through the program. It is the most wonderful feeling I've ever had. And I've been a mentor for many, many years. This is not the first program I've been in that has mentors, but just being able to see somebody and help them along and know that you made a difference in their life, that is what drives me.
Well, that brings up a question too that I often get from people, which is, how much of my time is this going to take? That's a good question to ask of mentors. What are some comments out there that you guys might recommend to answer that?
Well, you know, go ahead, Gene. Or Kathy, I'm sorry.
Kathy? Yes, Kathy, you were
It's really up to the mentor-mentee situation. I just finished mentoring and being mentored in the formal program, all DTMs, multiple DTMs, and this was for district leadership positions. So we all wanted to be on the phone for a long time because it was very, complex, technical questions. Especially I hate budgeting. My trio team knows that. So learning from somebody who actually likes budgeting was fantastic for me. I worked with Michelle Ribol as a division director. I loved being a division director. She wanted somebody that could help her with marketing, and that was my area of expertise. So the higher up you go, I think the more valuable mentoring becomes.
Right. Well, on average, though, how long, if someone's going to be a mentor and they said, look, I don't have a whole lot of time, how much time is this going to take me? What would you say is the minimum? Who has an answer for that? What do we want to say? If you're really going to support your mentor.
Every month.
How much time?
30 minutes to an hour every month. If you're going to do the formal program, would be the minimum.
Yeah. Okay.
It depends on how active your mentee is as well. You want to spend some time, I would say, as Ray mentioned, you kind of front load that time up front. You get them oriented, you get them coached up through their first few speeches, and they start to get some confidence and kind of get some momentum going. And then they may want to not spend as much, they may not need to spend as much time with you prepping for a speech or figuring things out. But the more you resource, the more time you spend with people up front, and the more you resource them up, the more self-sufficient they can become. So it might be, I would say, an hour a week at the beginning, and expect to do that for a while.
Can a mentee have more than one mentor?
Oh my goodness, yes.
So that might be another way of handling it. You might have a mentor who specializes in a certain area, and then you might have others who might be more generalists, and you could have several mentors perhaps as a mentee.
What I like to suggest is that there should be a filling out process when you get a new mentee, to sit down with them. And one of the most important things I find mentoring is set up a cadence, which is that what do we as mentor and mentee agree to as far as frequency of meeting, and stick to that cadence. It's like working out at the gym. It's so easy to say, oh, I'm going to miss a week, or I'm going to miss it 2 weeks. But when you have a cadence set, that you give them something to look forward to, and that as part of the mentoring experience, part of it is accountability. If I'm going to set aside that block of time on every Thursday to meet you at 8, please be diligent to be there as well. And what you do is establish a pattern of behavior that really helps grow that mentoring relationship.
Calvin, I think that's great, and I think on top of just how often we'll meet, what are some basic expectations? If you're the mentor, if I'm the mentor, I'm expecting the mentee to bring it. They need to stay engaged as well, and I think you need that energy or synergy between the mentor and the mentee, and if that starts to wither, then the relationship's not going to last. But I think that's one of the first things I'd tell people to do in one of the first meetings is sit down and kind of, how are we going to work this? Once a week, by phone, and reach some basic agreements with that.
Well, Rick, when you mentioned reaching basic agreements, I couldn't agree more in terms of how do you determine such things as how long will we maintain this relationship? I ideally would think, well, it should be between the two people who are working out the program, so we should have an agreement. So you get to know them pretty well as you're meeting them, getting to know their basic needs, but you should probably at the beginning establish such clarity as how long should we have this relationship? How often should we meet? What should those meetings entail? What would work best?
Yeah.
I think best for both of those, since they're so unique to each relationship, I think it's a good discussion that all people who are going to be mentors and mentees should have at the very beginning. What do you guys think about that?
I like that. And I think a mentor relationship is a little longer than, well, let me help you with your first speech. And then it can maybe last as long as it's still valuable, but it's more than a, let's get you past this point in time, I hope. And if you twisted my arm and said, well, what's a good number? I'm thinking maybe 6 months or so as a starting number to think about, but others may have other ideas on that.
Anything else to share? Who has some other ideas if you want to add to that?
I'd be glad to tell you a little bit more about the actual mentoring program.
Mm-hmm.
The mentoring program, as it's set up, once you start on the mentoring path, which is a separate path from what you're actually doing otherwise, the path itself, to get through it, is set up for 6 months. And I would encourage you, highly encourage you, to start with more than one protege. The reason for that is if you lose one, maybe they move, they get sick, whatever happens, and you have to start over again, the clock starts over again. So you want to have more than one when you start. In case somebody falls out, moves, or whatever happens, you still got that other one you're working with that keeps the clock running. The second one is in the program and pathways as a mentor protege, there is a monthly evaluation of the mentor and the protege. And you decide at that point if you're going to continue further or not. So it's set up in that program to be a monthly thing. You decide, is this working for me or not? Are you helping me or not? And if you're not, then maybe I need to find somebody else. This just isn't working for the mentor. You can say, hey, listen, I can't meet your requirements that you really need to have, so I'm going to help you find somebody else who can do that. And you would pass them on to somebody else that had more time or more effort in that, or experience in that area that you're looking for. I'm going to tell you, I've got two that are absolutely driving me crazy because they're both preachers. Now, preachers get a whole lot going through sermon or through seminary about how to give speeches and how to talk in public in front of their congregation and all of that. And yet these two guys, and I have two of them right now, still want feedback on what they do. In fact, I get a recording of their sermons sometimes. They go, right, this didn't feel right. What happened? Where did I lose them? And so you have to go through that and listen to it and figure out, if I were sitting in the congregation and I was listening to this, where would I have fallen asleep? Where have I lost interest? Or where did you just beat me up so bad I didn't want to hear anymore? And so those are a couple that I've got that are pretty tough. They're pretty tough to work with. They didn't start out coming in from high school and going, well, teach me how to speak. So those are pretty tough guys to work with. But typically, in this situation, the protege drives the relationship.
Yep.
What do they need help with? They're going to tell you.
Mm-hmm.
There is a big difference between a coach, which says, I'm going to help you figure out what to do with your hands while you're speaking, and we do that in 2 or 3 sessions and you're better, and a protege and a mentor situation. And I like to explain it like this, and it sounds a little strange perhaps. But I liken the relationship to a father-son relationship. Now, those of you who are fathers, do you want your kids to grow up as good as you? I don't. I want mine to be better than me.
Well, Ray, you bring up an interesting point here because we are all volunteers. And sometimes our lives change and you have a commitment to somebody to be their mentor or to be the protege, and then something happens in your life and what you had agreed to before is no longer valid for their lives. So what do we say to people when they're in a situation where this relationship is just not working out, whether it's because it's a personality thing or because we just have different schedules? How do we deal with that particular issue of when a mentor and a mentee's relationship are not going well? Because what often happens is that the mentee just stops getting support and then things can fall badly. So what are some things that some of you out there might say about that when the relationship's not working out? What are the options?
You know, I think hopefully the person in the club who's overseeing the mentoring program for that club is keeping their finger on the pulse, so to speak, and can maybe mediate some type of discussion. You know, we're communicators, and it's part of what we do is maybe try to work some things out, but there are going to be some relationships that are not going to work, and hopefully it will end nicely, and then you can find another mentor and move on. But I don't think you just, and I think what might happen is these things just, well, they just don't talk for 2 or 3 months and then it's over. So hopefully encourage them, each of these relationships, to at least try to work it out and say, you know what, it's just not working out. Let's separate peacefully and move on, instead of just letting it go. Those are my initial thoughts on it.
Well, Rick, you bring up a great point there about the need for the club to have one central person who is maintaining this program, looking at the quality of the program. How's this working for all of the mentors? Yeah. Do I need to step in anywhere and help out? So that's a great job. And of course, that may be too much to place onto the VPE, yeah, which is why I would encourage the club to have at least a person who's responsible, or have a committee of people who can help keep up with that, because that is a lot of work. But yeah, that's a good point. Anybody else have anything they want to add in that area? Yes, Jean.
Kathy put in a comment in the chat that if you do a team approach, a team of mentors working with people, it's easy for somebody else to kind of tag in, right? But I was gonna say, you know, one of the, I would just hope that there could be an honest discussion, right? And maybe some feedback about why it's not working. It's tough. It's tough, especially for somebody new coming in and having a mentor. And how do you fire somebody that's supposed to be bringing you up? And be very honest about why it's not working for you. But I would encourage, you know, if I was the VP of mentorship, I would encourage those conversations, because you know, the mentor would probably benefit from hearing a little bit of feedback too about the relationship. You know, I felt that you didn't have time for me, or I felt like our communication styles were very different, etc. And it doesn't have to be confrontational.
You know, along those lines, and with Kathy's comment, you know, I don't think we should envision this as, you know, the mentor and the mentee or protege kind of going around in little separate pods, and they just kind of bounce off the other little pods. And it is a team approach. And, you know, for a football analogy, I mean, the quarterback and the running back, they just don't say, well, we're only talking to each other. Well, maybe we ought to talk to the offensive lineman and receiver here. And so it is a team approach. And it is one team, one club, and you're all working together. So,
great. Well, I know we're running down to the time, and I've run out of my questions that I could possibly think of, but I want to put it out there if there's anyone with any other questions or comments about the program, especially where does someone go if they want to learn more about being a mentor? We've already talked about it's available on the Toastmasters website. what other resources would you guys recommend?
So Rick actually put
To support the
together
program.
a nice page, a landing page, right, Rick, on TMD55.org?
Yes.
Trying to remember. Maybe I can go there real quick and throw a bookmark into the chat, but can't remember. It's under corners.
Yeah, it's under the mentor corner.
Jean, is under corners, members corner.
Members. Yep, got it. Yeah.
And there should be their mentoring.
Mentoring. Got it. All right. So
I was
that's
thinking that I had put
that's
a PowerPoint there at one point, but I don't know that I did. So I need to
yeah,
check.
and I think it would be cool to put that the one from the last round, Rick,
Yeah,
of training, like the benefits to mentors, benefits to mentees, and it has those three kind of like example, first meeting, second meeting, and then long term.
Yeah.
I think is helpful. So we can post that there too.
exactly.
So again, it's a resource on the Toastmaster District 55 website where we can find more information about mentoring.
There's the old successful club series mentoring.
Ah, yes, yes.
I got it right here.
Masters.
You're going old school, Betty.
But you can find that stuff on the Toastmasters District website as well. You could just do a search under mentoring or just mentoring, and they probably can help you with a lot of resources. Another thing I always recommend to people, if you're needing help from Toastmasters, one great way to find information is just call them. They've got people there who specifically can answer questions of any sort, and they have a tremendous amount of resources available, even in addition to anything you can find that clubs and districts have shared that are out there on the internet that anyone can just do a general search for. And you can find great things out there as well. Well, I know we're down to our final bit of time. Is there anything else that anyone wants to add at this point? Yes, Jean.
So my advice, Kimberly, if you don't have a mentorship program right now and you're looking to get one started, is just start small, try some stuff out, figure what works out in your club, and then kind of grow it from there.
And it's all a learning opportunity, which is what we're all about here in Toastmasters. So I want to thank you all for being here. Jean, Rick, Calvin for being members of the team here tonight, and Wafae Owen, our district director, for being here, and Kathy Moore. We got the whole trio on here tonight, and some people from other districts as well. I appreciate you guys sharing your experience, and I hope we can go ahead and put this recording up on the mentoring page so that people can watch it at any point. So thank you all for your time, and we look forward to more continuing education classes. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Bart.
Thank you.